Thank you. Good afternoon. Wanted to quickly do some introductions here. My name is Alex Siegel. I am the director of Tech Week. We are a week-long technology conference and festival in 5 cities, and coming up very soon, we've partnered with Emerge Americas to host Emerge Americas Tech Week, May 1st through 7th here in Miami Beach, which we're very excited about. Part of building this innovation ecosystem, great events like this, we're all a part of it. So we'll pass along to my colleagues to introduce themselves briefly, and then we'll get started.
Hello, everybody. I'm Laura Maidon. I'm the Managing Director for Endeavor Miami. We're a nonprofit that finds and selects high-impact entrepreneurs to help them scale their companies with the ultimate objective to foster economic development through job creation. And before that, my background is in private equity and M&A, and most recently product development.
I'm Amorati. I'm a partner at Birchmere Ventures. Birchmere is an early-stage VC fund with offices in Palo Alto, California, which is probably not that interesting for this conversation, but also Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, which may be more relevant for all of you here. Do seed and early-stage investments across the country wherever we see great investments with great entrepreneurs we can partner with. Before joining Birchmere 2 years ago, I started and sold 3 tech startups. The first one was in the algorithmic trading space to Morgan Stanley. The second one was LinkedIn's first acquisition. It was a company called Mspoke that I was the CEO and co-founder of. And then most recently, before joining Birchmere, I ran a media site called Read Write Web, which sold to a private equity firm a couple years ago called Say Media.
Hi, everyone. My name is Alex Robbio. I'm one of the 3 co-founders of Belatrix Software. Basically, what we do is we provide software innovation services, which means that cutting-edge companies will outsource their innovation to us. So basically, we help them get to market more quickly and with less risk. So we eliminate a lot of the technology risk that startups face. I'm also very proud to be one of the Endeavor entrepreneurs, as well as with my partners. Thank you.
Awesome. My name is Steve Rapetti. First and foremost, I'm a geek, but I'm also an investor. All aspects of the ecosystem. I am a member of the largest angel network in the state of Florida, New World Angels. We're also fortunate enough to have the significant majority of the board of directors in the audience here, for those people that didn't think investors were going to be here today. I'm also I'm a board member of the Miami Innovation Fund, as likewise, the majority of the board of directors are also of that group in the audience here. And I'm also a managing partner of Crunchfire Ventures, and my partners are here as well. So we do startups, and this is exactly the kind of thing that we're interested in.
Awesome, and glad everyone brought fans with them. So wanted to start out by answering clearly the easiest question of all, which is, what does it take for a startup to achieve scale and to be sustainable? Clearly, it's one that everyone has the answer to, but sitting here with 4 who've been successful entrepreneurs, successful investors, what would you say are maybe the 3 most important things, just from the perspective of the business model, for a startup to really get over the hump and achieve sustainable growth?
I can share a few statistics. The World Economic Forum with Stanford University surveyed more than 1,000 successful entrepreneurs, and what came across the board was the top thing that everyone mentioned was talent. The second is access to markets, and the third, access to capital. So it's actually Endeavor's value proposition is built around those 3 areas, and we can elaborate on each one, and I'm sure everyone will have something to say, but those are the 3 challenges also that we discovered here in a diagnostic report. Well, 2 of those 3, because markets, fortunately, Miami has access to markets here. That's the one thing we have with Latin America, the US, and also part of Europe. But talent and access to capital would be key to support.
Yeah, I think it's important to figure out sort of where you are when you're answering this question, right? So there's a stage where a company is basically blindly to like semi-blindly searching for customers who care about what they're doing. And until you figure out that you've actually built something customers care about, that's the answer to the question, right? Build something people want. And trying to prematurely try to scale is extremely dangerous. So some colleagues at Stanford did a study where they basically tried to map startups like we've mapped the human genome, a project called the Startup Genome Project, where they surveyed 3,000 startups as they went through the evolution. And it turned out that the #1 predictor of success was people trying to scale prematurely. So I think early on, that's what you're trying to do. But I think to the sort of topic of this panel here, once you have a product that people really care about, it becomes a very different set of questions that you need to care about, right? Because the things that got you to the point of actually figuring out, okay, somebody cares about my product, it's a meaningful group of people, it's a very different set of skills, a very different set of processes that you need to put in place to actually ramp up. And that tends to be talent and money, from my experience.
One comment I have, I guess, as a business person, is that I believe that the business community doesn't take an important enough role in talent development. I think we tend to whine a lot about access to talent, that that it's hard, that it's not there, or whatever. But we don't invest enough in, first of all, recruiting, but more than that, developing talent, investing in training, investing in internships, getting out there and building relationships with universities. I think that we, as a business community, could do a lot more. And that doesn't require government support. It doesn't require anything. It's something that we can do on our own.
Yeah, I would say the single most important thing from our perspective is a word that everybody should get their head around in business, in all aspects of business, and that's validation. So you may think you have an idea. Okay, maybe. Prove it. How do you do that? Are you going to go raise $1 million to waste to figure out if you've got a good idea? Incremental validation. Test yourself. You need to answer these questions. Can you get your market? Can you get them efficiently? Can you not lose a ton of money to prove these things out? Did you get it right, or do you need to tweak it? I almost guarantee you got to tweak it. But every step of the way, even when you're on the other side of this, past the early stages, now you're in growth stage. Does it make sense to go into that market, or raise that capital, or bring in those partners? It's all about that validation component. And first, you have to answer those questions. So my other two things are validation and validation.
Right. And I think what you're validating evolves over time, right? I think
Yes.
that's the point. So a way, there's been a lot of popular books come out over the last couple of years around this framework of the lean startup, right? The graduate course I teach at Carnegie Mellon is lean entrepreneurship. And I think really what the lean startup is it's taking the scientific method and it's applying it to do startups, right? So when you think about the scientific method, you say, okay, what do I want to validate at this point in time? What's the sort of least expensive, most risky part about my business at this point? And then can I go and validate that? But those validations, they evolve over time, right?
And never stop.
And they never stop, but they do evolve. And so, one of the things that we found is that at a certain point in that growth curve, you often have to go to, so I guess core to our belief is that there are great entrepreneurs everywhere who are validating the early parts of this kind of methodology. They're doing a great job validating if the market cares about it or not. What we found is it's very hard to find the type of talent you need to scale these organizations to greatness in these regions. So I'm a partner at a fund in Pittsburgh, and I have investments in Portland, Austin, Los Angeles, New York, right? A lot of non-Silicon Valley markets. I also have a couple investments in Silicon Valley. And what I found is in those markets other than Silicon Valley and New York, we often have to open an office somewhere else to add that talent over time. And that doesn't mean that you don't continue to build great talent here. It doesn't mean that you move the whole company there, but the density of talent, when you're really at truly the scaling moment, you're trying to truly scale your business, it's very hard to find that talent in a lot of other places. That's been my experience, at least. Looks like you want to respond, so.
Well, so I firmly believe that you can have a great startup anywhere in this world, and this environment here in Miami and in South Florida and Florida in general, and in fact the whole Southeast, is completely conducive. We're at a stage where we have a distributed capabilities, so we can have offices in New York or Silicon Valley or whatever, but it's also true that the entire ecosystem is right here, probably right here in this room for all of you. The larger issue, I think, is, again, if you've got a real businesses get funded.
Well, so I don't think finding capital is hard, to be clear.
But so the talent as well. So, you know, again, if I think people have been talking earlier about, you know, you've got kids and, you know, you're less risk tolerant. Well, you want to see startups where, you know, if you fail, then it's not going to take you and your family down with you. So how can you mitigate that failure? Well, again, validation. Be more comfortable. Be more assured with what you have. But it is true, though, as you say, that there are markets where it's relevant for you to have associations. Don't think local only, or don't think Silicon Valley only. Think global and all the opportunity that brings. So.
I mean, what we've seen, so I ran Read Write Web before doing this, right? I had 30 employees in 20 cities, right? I think technology has changed the ability to have sort of multiple offices. And what we've found is you can build pretty high performance organizations in 2 city locations. I know you're building.
Yeah, we have locations in Mendoza, Argentina, Lima, Peru, here in Naples, Florida, and also in New York. Yeah, and it's seamless. It's very seamless.
One of the things that we believe too is that while you're building that ecosystem that Steve is mentioning, you can supplement talent with mentors, with great mentors and advisors, and that's what we do at Endeavor. And once you have enough role models that inspire others, then the talent comes to that market as well.
Yeah, I think seeing what success looks like is really important, right?
So then, what does it take to kind of win the war for talent in a market like Miami, where there is plenty of talent here, but people look to New York or they look to Silicon Valley as the first place where top tech talent goes. So how do you, as an entrepreneur, as an investor, how do you attract top talent? And then, kind of once we've figured that out, I'm curious to hear, from you, Alex, how you retain and train that talent, because I know with the scale you guys have at Belatrix, that's been a crucial part as well.
Yeah, I think you have to look at your company, and in our case, we invest a lot more in development and training than in recruitment. Recruitment is something that's of course very important. You have to do it, but I think very early on, and it might be because we started in a very small company, in a very small city in Argentina, where access to talent wasn't as prevalent as it could be in other larger cities. And so from very early stage, we had to build our own talent. And so we built what we call the Belatrix University within the company. And we basically have over 2,080 hours of curriculum within the company. And that's from project management to advanced software architecture, to communication skills, English, of course, because we do all of our business in English, and English is a second language for a lot of our employees. But it's over 2,000 hours, which is, if you think about it, it's almost an associate or more. And our employees not only get better through it, but they really appreciate it. So it also becomes a tool of retention because they know that you're investing in them, and they know they're not going to get it anywhere else. And so when they get another offer, they will put them side by side, and they will also put a lot of weight on the investment you've made in them. So I think for us, at least, that's been a very important factor of our success and being able to scale up.
How do you find the talent in Mendoza or in Lima? I mean, those markets where you guys need 200 very good people, and you will take them through that training process to get them where you want them. But how do you even go about identifying and recruiting in the first place?
We have multiple channels, but one of the ones that we're the most proud of is what we call the casting call. So basically what we do is we invite probably 40 or 50 newly graduates from the top university, but not only from the top, from all universities. And they go through a hands-on program. It's actually 3 days, and they do exercises. They do, they go through some team challenges. They do some light coding, light software testing, and then after that, we select half of them. We put them through a very hands-on training. That's a full month of training. We pay for their time. We also pay for the training. After that, we select a few of them, and we put them on a full internship. And that's a full paid internship. And after that, if they make it, they become part of the company. So by that time, you really know them. They've been with you for like 6 months. So that's the way we do it. It takes a lot of investment, but it works. And you get loyal people as well. not only great people that are very smart, but also they're very loyal.
I think one of the key issues as it relates to scaling is that you will need different people throughout each stage, right? So when you have a small company, everyone is doing everything and the culture is inherent in all the activities that you're doing, then as you grow and you have this proven business model and repeatable revenue stream, you have to start specializing. And in order to move from being an entrepreneur to a CEO with functions and designing an organization, that's where lots of entrepreneurs have challenges, and to still keep, the culture, but being very clear at responsibility. So that's where the challenge in attracting talent in that phase of scaling is, because you need someone that maybe has worked for a larger company, but can also understand the startup culture and do that transition.
And so, Sean, I'm curious, you talk about sort of a more dispersed talent pool that you work with across, multiple cities. And
Two offices, not that dispersed really, but yeah.
True.
So what we've found is that, from our experience at least, I'm not that interested in people at the early stages of the growth who have worked at big companies, just because there are exceptions to this, but in general, we haven't found that to be as predictive factor of success as somebody who's been part of an organization that has scaled, right? So the more interesting question to me when I'm, as a board member, interviewing these people is sort of, where did you join that company from a revenue or a customer or engaged user perspective, and then where did you leave it? And people who have been through that growth curve a couple of times and seem to be like the most helpful to add to people who are about to go through that. And I think part of the reason is if you've been part of a big company, one of the things I found is that you spend a lot of your time reacting to things that comes at you, right? The opportunities that come at you. And when you're in that growth stage, you still have to go out and manufacture those opportunities. And it's just a different enough skill set. There are people who are outliers to this, but we've found we need people the most successful people in terms of generally who have helped our companies through it have been through that hockey stick growth at another company. And a lot of those are in New York or San Francisco. So that's why we spend a lot of time helping companies open offices there. But the interesting thing that we found, which may be interesting for a place like Miami, is that then the team that is in the original headquarters, and often still the headquarters, experiences what that success looks like. And that really changes the culture of a city. So the city that I'm from, Pittsburgh, right, we've had a number of those over the last dozen years, and you're starting to see people who have seen that life cycle, and they have maybe more bench strength to go further. And that's great. From my perspective, it would be wonderful to have a company that stays, all in one location. It was before I joined Birchmere, but we were the first investors in a company called Cvent that went public last year. And Cvent is in DC, and the founding team scaled all the way to the $1 billion plus IPO, and that's fantastic.
Interesting. So I guess, I started out asking for three things that lead to sustainable scale, and we got validation and talent, and those seem to be the recurring themes. When we look at talent, I think a lot of what we've talked about so far is kind of the full team. But when we think about, and you've started to come to this point, Sean, when you look at the leadership team, what is it that you look for in a leadership team, kind of common traits that lead to success, not just experience and having done it before, but common traits, and then what are those traits and how do they maybe evolve as a company goes from early stage towards IPO?
So I'll start. So for me, one of the things I found is that when people there are people who have success in other parts of their life before. There are people who just, success is the only option, right? And so even if they've never done a startup before, it's great to see people who that's kind of their MO. So we invested in a company in Portland, and one of the founders was an Olympic athlete before he did a startup, right? And he just had this kind of mental framework of the only thing I know how to do is succeed, and when failure comes up, I look at failure as not an option and push through it. And I think our great management teams tend to take that attitude to it. But I'm sure more insightful from the panel here.
Well, in our case, what we call high impact entrepreneurs are the ones that have leadership potential and the ability to scale, as he mentioned. Drive is, I think, very important, drive to success. In addition to that, in our case, we also look for people that are involved in the community and that want to play that role, and later on become mentor and investor, because that's how we think the ecosystem comes together. So those are the traits that we're looking for in the top team.
Steve, anything to?
Yeah, so I mean, it's the kinds of things that, whatever the book is, the things I learned in kindergarten, honesty, and hard work and all that stuff like that. But those really are true. I mean, if you can't be honest to yourself first and foremost, then you're going to have a big problem. And if you can't be honest with the folks that you work with, you're going to have an even bigger problem. If you can't get along with everybody on the playing ground, that's going to be a big problem. And truly, the leadership, the ability to see that vision. If you're going to run the company, you have to see that vision. That doesn't mean you actually have to execute on every piece, but you certainly need to be able to see that vision, paint it in front of everyone else, get everybody else's passion up, and then be able to put a management team together that can actually execute on that vision and understand what your strengths are and your weaknesses, and surround yourselves with people that complement you, that fill that out. Again, if you put a bunch of people in a room that all say yes, 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 everybody but you is needed, the rest can go. You need people that are going to challenge you, that are going to make you think, justify, validate to yourself.
So we'll move to Q&A in a second here. Any last points you guys want to make, whether it's about the management team, the talent you build, the kind of innovation ecosystem that you look for in a place like Miami, whether it's not merely the entrepreneurs, the VCs, whether it's lawyers, foundations, great organizations like Endeavor. Anything just to sort of sneak in right before we go to the audience?
I mean, I would say that, as I mentioned before, that for Miami, that we're building that ecosystem and that we're still growing, I think it's very important to surround yourself with people that can give you very good advice and good mentors. We do that at Endeavor, but I think it's important for the community to stay together and also at different stages of the entrepreneur phases.
To me, I think it would be, for those dabbling with the idea of being entrepreneurs, is just get to it. If you can get funding, awesome, that's great. We never got any funding. It was a lot of work. It took us a long time to really be able to, scale it up, but we were able to do it, and so could you. So, if you can get funding, that's great. If you can get accepted to Endeavor, that's great. But you can also do it in other ways. So just get to it. Just do it.
I would just say customers are really helpful as well, and it seems like we have a market here with a lot of customers, right? And one of the things that I've seen in a lot of sort of non-tech-centric cities, and I don't know Miami well enough to know if this is true here or not, is that they tend to have an unintentional bias against buying locally. So like when you walk into the Whole Foods, right, you see the big posters like buy local produce, it's better for your family. I'm not sure if that's true or not, but I can tell you from looking at my credit card statement, our family has like really embraced that. I think actually that if you were walking into the big procurement office of whatever your big multinationals are here, they should be saying the same thing. They should be saying, buy from local tech companies because it does really help the whole ecosystem. And the interesting thing is it doesn't just help the region of Miami, it also helps those companies because they don't just get interaction from the CEO then, they get interaction from the whole team. And so I think a lot of regions could do a better job buying from their startups.
And I think, if you're going to design, if you're a company or an entrepreneur and you're going to design for growth, one of the big things you got to keep in your head is that it's not a single thing. There's this entire ecosystem which literally is end to end. And if you're a startup, you're not going to be pitching to a VC or looking for validation from a VC. And likewise, if you're a big company, you're going to need the relationships that you get from larger folks. And here in Florida, and right here in Miami, we have the entire ecosystem. You have very early stage investors that will invest in ideas and help you get there. You've got organizations and mentors that are there to help you to get to that next stage. As you get filtered and validated out of these, then you've got investors and companies and other groups of folks that are there to help you. They're out there. There are deals getting done every single day. Tons of them. More today than last year and more than the year before with all that. And then as you keep going on, again, you don't have to jump on a plane to Silicon Valley unless there's some strategic reason to go there. The resources you need are right here. And right on up into the high-end angel, right on into the VC, on into the exits. And it's absolutely appropriate to align yourself with anybody and any resource that's going to benefit your business, regardless of location. But everything you need starts right here.
Any questions from the audience? I think I see one back there. Yep.
Thank you, panel. I'm Nick Yules. I'm on the board of Florida Atlantic University, where we currently have a business plan competition underway. I'm going to give you a typical company that's going to be the output in a week or two of our competition. Tell me where to send this company for future funding. This is a company with a great idea that's already achieved their rocket patent application, where they are about to receive about $150,000 in angel investing, either from family or elsewhere. And now they want to get moving, hiring the first 2 or 3 employees. They need some money specifically. Where in this area do they go to achieve that funding?
So you're actually, that company's right on the cusp. They're past the very early stage. I don't know that they're at the VC level. They're sort of in that in-between area. But one of the things that company can do is align themselves with sort of that mid-tier money, but at the same time go to the next tier and say, no, I'm not looking to raise money with you guys today. What I'm doing is trying to reach this validation that allows me to get here, and when I get there, I want to already have you in my pipeline so I can cut a deal like that. So midterm, whether it's family, friends, organized groups, individual angels, angel groups, whether it's New World Angels or Miami Innovation Fund or any of, again, a half dozen other folks that are looking to deploy capital, that's sort of that mid-tier. But I wouldn't lose sight of the upper folks. I just wouldn't waste time trying to get money from them, but I would definitely get on their radar now.
The other thing I'd add is that, and this we could probably spend an hour on, so I'll try to hit, I won't go that long, but obviously. But the venture capital industry itself has become really unbundled, right? So platforms like AngelList, I think, are a really strong answer for that as well. We're seeing that.
And early shares right here in Miami.
Yeah, I don't know those guys, but it's the
early shares right here in Miami.
There we go. Oh, awesome. Got it.
No pressure.
Yeah, perfect. So, but these crowdfunding platforms, right, are really, really powerful.
Any other questions? I think I see one. Yep.
Jason Ibera, bunch of different things. I guess 9 to 5, I do Sherlock Tech recruiting. Committed about a week of my life to a bus with Steve, to a startup bus not too long ago. That was a great experience. In those 3 days, I learned quite a bit. And Alex, I could only imagine what I had learned in 6 months in your People Accelerator. And I'm not asking you to let me come and be in your People Accelerator. What I'm asking you is, have you taken this template and taken these thousands of hours that you've taken in developing this and tried to install that in a different organization? Because I'm working on starting Startup Grind for Miami, which is an organization to help entrepreneurs accelerate themselves. But we're entrepreneurs and we've got the testicular fortitude to go out there and take a stab at it. We need the talent to back us up. So would you be open to seeing if that template can work in some of the large corporations that we have around here and help us develop more talent in Miami? Because what we're really missing is we're missing talent, and we know that, and the money will follow. We need the talent, and I'm asking for your help.
Sure. Yeah, I'm assuming you're asking me, right? Yeah, I'm like I mentioned, I'm an Endeavor entrepreneur, and part of being an Endeavor entrepreneur is giving back to the community, and that's one of the reasons why we do that program, is that a lot of those people that we don't hire, they go back into the community, they pick up those skills, and hopefully, make the pie bigger. So instead of everyone fighting for a little bigger piece of that talent pie, we just grow it. So yeah, I'd love to connect with you and discuss that idea. That'd be wonderful.
Wonderful. I think we got one more question.
Yeah. Question about scalability. So I think common wisdom by VCs is you have a good idea, get it out as soon as possible, then iterate and whatever. Now, my question is, you have a good idea, and there are 100 million people looking for good ideas. They take your idea, they have a little bit more funding than you. You might have, let's say, $500,000 or $1 million. They have $5 million behind them. So doesn't it make more sense, if you believe that you have a good idea, raise the money, build it up, build a big infrastructure, and then take a bet, and if you have a really good idea, it will go. Now, why give the idea to 100 million people who are starving for good ideas?
Wow. So, you know, I'm frequently asked to sign NDAs as an investor, which I don't do because of all the other deals that we look at, and I would hate to collide into them. But you know, for quite a few years, I was an entrepreneur myself, and I also did not require people to sign NDAs, even when I was talking to potential competition. And it was for a really good reason. I'm going to execute faster than you, try and keep up. By the time you figure out what I'm doing, I'm going to be past you from that standpoint. It's a whole lot easier to take and build a company and validate it and prove it out and be able to execute well than it is to run around the city, the state, the country, trying to raise a whole bunch of money. Now, if you have, and there certainly are exceptions, I mean, if you have a track record of taking money, executing very well, having wonderful exits, then you already have a following of folks that will say, hey, I want to get in on the next idea. But in absence of that, again, it's very, very difficult because investors, we want to deploy money, we just don't want to flush it down the toilet. So we want to find the balance with all of that. So the question that we would have is, what's the least amount necessary for you to validate so that we mitigate our risk and have more comfort, but also allow you to do what you do? Because we don't want to run your company. We're looking for folks that can run it. If we solve your money problem, can you run with it? Can we use our network of resources and our relationships to help you run with it? You're the guy that's running the company, and we want to support that, but we also want to mitigate the risk.
Yeah, I think the data would actually bear out that it turns out that's not usually the way that things play out. So it turns out that raising more money than a competitor when you're in similar markets at a similar stage is not actually a very good predictor of success. And in fact, if you think about like the premature scaling research that I referenced at the beginning, it actually turns out it can be very dangerous in certain situations to try to tackle problems that aren't actually the problem your company is trying to solve at that point, which at the early stage is often forgetting if anybody cares about what you're building. And it doesn't take a lot of capital to do that.
I read an article that mentioned scaling as the problem of more, right? You have the problem of more all the time. So more capital, more resources, more, you know, whether you need to prove or not. And that's a key question, and it's very personal. If you have the capital and you can prove it by yourself, then it's perfect if you can bootstrap and prove before you go to raise money, but not necessarily everyone is in that case. In Endeavor, I mean, we're a different organization because we're not investing directly, we're helping entrepreneurs scale. So we think that sharing, and where everything obviously is confidential within our network, is for the better, right? Because that's the way we can help. So we also don't believe in NDAs.
Awesome. Well, thank you all so much. Appreciate the time. And